The Kentucky Lake waters were up to near record highs as anglers fished parking lots, farms, and backyards. But our winter locked onto a pattern that got better as the week rolled along. Today on FLW Outdoors, Larry Nixon joins us to review the exciting two-man race to the finish. We'll recap the exciting and surprising results from one of America's great waterways. Plus, the Angler of the Year race has tightened up with just one event to go. It all starts right now on FLW Outdoors. Hello, everyone, and welcome to FLW Outdoors. I'm Carlton Wing with Larry Nixon and Taylor Carr. We're joining you from the shores of Kentucky Lake, the site of the fifth stop on the Walmart FLW Tour.
And it's a lake that's way up there as far as water level is concerned. Larry, you had a good finish here. How much was the water level a factor in what you did?
Well, it was a big factor. I really thought I was going to catch them a lot better than what I did, but my pattern gradually went away when that water came up 7 feet, and I really struggled the first day, and finally I picked up on something the second day and managed to finish 28th.
You stand 11th now in the FLW Championship standings. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm glad to be there. That's kind of a lock for the championship.
Let's take a look at the top 5 now. Dan Moorhead still has a lead, but that lead narrowed somewhat. David Dudley made up some ground. He's 26 points behind Dan Moorhead now. Then Clark Wendland is the only other angler with a realistic shot at Angler of the Year.
That's right. I think there's only 3 people that's got a shot at it because that 4th place guy is 105 points back, and that's a lot of ground to make up in one tournament.
One tournament, Lake Wheeler, coming up. Now, obviously, 5 tournaments in with 1 tournament to go. It's crunch time to get into that final field of 48.
It's definitely crunch time. Some of them guys down there around 50th, like George Cocker, and then a couple of the other guys that are right there on that bubble. You know, Kevin's moved in, and this tournament's real important for a bunch of guys.
And the FLW Championship in Richmond, Larry, is going to be a real big deal for the guys. To make that thing is a real honor, and it's going to be a big outdoor show. It's going to be a huge deal.
It really is. You know, if you qualify for the FLW Championship this year, it's automatic $12,200, I think, if I'm right on that. But the winner gets $500,000, so this is a big tournament.
Big money, $1.5 million overall. It's going to be great for the anglers and great for the fans. Now, let's talk a little bit about what's coming up in this program. We're going to recap the exciting action on Kentucky Lake. You talk to our champion, and you'll talk to 2 other finalists as well and find out what worked. Kind of surprising at times.
It really surprised me. I know I figured it out about the 3rd day when I got cut, and I got to asking questions. I said, how's these boys catching all these fish? And you know, they were catching them on the old lake line, which is not, I mean, that's not unusual, but when a lake rises like Kentucky Lake and the water's only 70 degrees, you expect a lot of fish to still be in the shallow bushes, but boy, they proved me wrong.
We'll hear from Gary Yamamoto, also 2nd place finisher Davey Height, and the winner, Steve Kennedy, a young man who got his first win. Larry, it was big for Steve Kennedy.
It was real big. He's got a neat history, and that was really big for that boy.
We've got a lot to look forward to on this edition of FLW Outdoors. Coming up next, we will recap the exciting action on Kentucky Lake.
Today's Field and Stream Trivia is about one of the great records in all of fishing. Where did George Perry catch his record largemouth bass? Here's your Field and Stream Trivia answer. On June 2nd, 1932, George Perry caught his 22-pound, 4-ounce largemouth on Montgomery Lake in Georgia.
Kentucky Lake, day 1.
The 5th stop on the FLW Tour found Kentucky and Barkley Lakes as high as anyone can remember. Now, conventional thinking was the fish would be in the flooded bushes, but anglers who challenged convention had a better shot of making it out of the field of 175 and into the 10-man final. Rick Marsh started Carolina rigging early, and we'd see much more of that as the tournament wore on. Then we found Larry Nixon flipping a Senko in the flooded brush. It was the biggest of Larry's 4 fish. With 11 pounds, he ended up 66th after day 1. A much better day for Kevin Van Dam, 19.5 pounds and 3rd place on a spinnerbait in shallow, flooded areas.
Not all the fish in the lake have spawned yet, and I'm trying to concentrate on what I think are the areas where some of the fish might still be spawning.
Terry Baxay stood in 2nd, and his bites came fishing dead slow. Day 1's only 20-pound sack came from Wisconsin's Tom Monsoor, mainly on a homemade jig in open water.
Kentucky Lake. Day 2.
On day 2, 34th place David Dudley found his fish near the bank, while Randy Alexander was Carolina rigging and catching his own keeper fish. And the leaders continued to bring in nice bags of fish. Tom Monsoor followed his leading stringer with 16 more pounds, and Van Dam brought in 18, mainly on a spinnerbait. He took the lead and made the finals for the first time this year. Joining Van Dam and Monsoor in the finals, Gary Yamamoto, Terry Baxay, Todd Airy, Steve Kennedy, Davey Height, Terry Seagraves, Mike Sermon, and Jeffrey Thomas. The Snickers Big Bass Awards went to Cody Bird at 6'10" and Robert Beatty at 7'2".
Kentucky Lake. Day 3.
On day 3, the 10 finalists fanned out across Kentucky Lake, some with 80-mile trips ahead. They had to deal with water levels that were still rising and the surprising emergence of Carolina rigging as the go-to method. Over to day 1 leader Tom Monsoor, Carolina rigging a brush hog and keeping his hot hand going with a 3.5-pound smallmouth. With 5.5 pounds, Monsoor had the 9 a.m. lead. Steve Kennedy was on a Carolina rigging pattern too. With catches only 4 minutes apart, he soon had 7.5 pounds and was right behind Monsoor.
There he is.
Half an hour later, Kennedy had one of his best fish of the day, a 4.5-pound smallmouth. Soon, the second-year pro from Auburn, Alabama, fishing his first FLW final, was in the lead with 14 pounds. Davey Height was catching lots of fish, just no keepers. Finally, his 17th bass exceeded 15 inches, and unexplainably, Height was in the groove. Within 24 minutes, Height had a limit. He'd gone from 0 weight and last place to 16 pounds and first. Day 2 leader Kevin Van Dam was struggling. He had 9 pounds of fish, but fell from 1st to 10th place. 2 anglers had the hot hand on day 3, both Carolina rigging. Davey Height went on to catch an outstanding 19 pounds, only to be passed by Kennedy with a tournament and career high 23.
Kentucky Lake. Day 4.
Day 4 was a 2-man race for the title, and while Davey Height caught well over 15 pounds, Steve Kennedy was unstoppable, adding an amazing 21 pounds 13 ounces to his total weight. When Height weighed his final fish, Kennedy had the tournament won with over 9.5 pounds of fish still to weigh. As we look at the numbers of the Stanley stats, 4 is the number of 20-pound stringers weighed in for the tournament. Steve Kennedy turned in 2 of them on the final 2 days when it counted the most. 10 pounds 1 ounce is the distance between Kennedy and second-place finisher Davey Height. And 48 is Kevin Van Dam's season ranking after his first top 10 of the season. With 1 tournament to go, the Van Daminator is online for a shot at the $1.5 million FLW Tour Championship. Van Dam won the Shot Vac Clean Sweep Award with the best weight from the first 2 days at 37 pounds 10 ounces. The Energizer Keeps On Going Award went to Jeffrey Thomas, who came back from 67th place on day 1 to make the cut and ultimately finish in 5th place. But the big winner of the week was the second-year pro with a first-class payday. Steve Kennedy put it all together for a weekend in Kentucky he'll never forget.
Welcome back to FLW Outdoors, and with me I've got Gary Yamamoto, our 9th place finisher. And Gary, this is kind of a special tournament to you because your boy was in that top 10 also.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing because I came over here to the tournament and he said he was coming, and I said, you know, let's go and pre-fish together. So we pre-fished and had a good time, and then a big surprise happened.
A big surprise, huh? Both of you made the top 10.
Both of us made the top 10, and I didn't know he was going to be a co-sponsor or
Oh,
on
really?
the tournament. So here I am, I'm wearing his hat in an FLW tournament sponsored by my son. Goodness, this is a good one. Got one. You know, accidents do happen at times.
Let me talk to you a little bit about this special bait that you're using, and you've got it here, and I'm gonna pull one out of the bag for you. This is a lot of people knows what it is. I mean, it's a very popular bait in the tournament circuits, and I'm sure you caught your fish on that, right?
Basically, I caught all my fish on it.
That's a Senko.
Yes. This is a Senko, and most people are either wacky worming it,
Putting a hook in the middle.
Hook in the middle, or Texas rigging it with the hook in the head. One thing that I wanted to show people is that there are other ways of using the Senko. I've Texas rigged this bait with a fairly heavy tungsten sinker, about 5/8 or so. I found out that I could drop this thing behind someone that had flipped other things.
Right.
And get right down to the base of the buckbush. And what I do would be flip it from the boat and just going straight down. Not casting it, trying to go straight down. And straight down, and once I hit the bottom, I pick it up once or twice, and I make that bait flip, and then let it rest again. And if there was a bass in there, he could not stand it. Yay! It sure have been tough.
I've been fishing 27 years tournaments, and it's rare. And in fact, I can't recall an instance when the lake rose 7 foot that the fish went out instead of in. You know, rising water, usually fish go in.
Yeah.
But that's why I say nobody will ever know everything there is to know about bass fishing.
No, that's why it's so interesting that, you know, as long as you have fished and I have fished, we're still learning something every time. And in fact, this morning I said I had some time, so I got my notepad on and said, I'm going to start taking some notes because I'm getting too old to remember all this stuff.
Well,
what color did I use at that last?
Good, but I wouldn't have had a note that told me to move out when the water was rising.
No. And I went into some tough wooded area and the toughest areas I could get into in order to go to that shallower spot, but they don't like that, I guess.
No.
This lake is, the fish is accustomed to moving. They're accustomed to the moving water, and they feel that it's going to go back down again soon.
Gary, I want to thank you for coming out and being on the show with me this morning, and congratulations again on a great tournament. And when we come back, we're going to be with Kentucky Pro Terry Bolton, and he's going to give you a tip on how to catch more fish.
Here's your Rubbermaid BFL recap. From the Great Lakes Division out of Clinton, Iowa, the winner, Curtis Samo, Preston, Illinois, 14 pounds, 14 ounces. Mississippi Division out of Columbus, Mississippi, the winner, Todd Ratcliffe of Meridian, 13 pounds, 12 ounces.
Welcome back to FLW Outdoors and Kentucky Lake, a lake that had tons of fish for this event and also still gives us fishing lessons.
Well, that's true, and oftentimes the difference between victory and defeat comes in sweating out the details. Kentucky Pro Terry Bolton shares this tip designed to give you more confidence and possibly more fish.
I've got a couple of friends of mine from Arkansas, Scott Rook and Stephen Browning, that got me into painting weights several years ago. And I've kind of got a 3 or 4 step process that I go through to paint the weights. First, I'll dump them in rubbing alcohol. And then after I allow them to sit in the alcohol for just a minute or two, I'll pour the alcohol off. Then I dump the weights onto a towel, take toothpicks, and I poke them into the back of the weight, and I'll set them up on a foam block. And after I got the weights onto the foam block, I'll allow them to dry just a second, make sure all the alcohol's off. Then I'll pick out whatever color I want to paint those weights, and I will spray paint them. And after I allow that to dry, then I'll get my 30-minute epoxy out, and I'll pour that onto a piece of paper, and I'll mix whatever color glitter that I might have, and then I'll apply the epoxy with the glitter to the weights and allow that to dry. And that's the way we come up with these real pretty worm weights. I feel like it's more of a confidence factor. At times I feel like it does make a difference, and you know, I think any time that you fish a bait with more confidence, you're going to catch more fish with it. You know, a lot of friends of mine make fun of me for fishing with a red weight on my plum worm, but you know, I've gotten to where I've fished the bait like that for so many years. If I don't have that red weight, you know, I just feel almost naked, like I'm not going to catch anything. So I think mentally it makes a big difference, and I think it allows me to catch a few more fish through the day.
Whoever said nice guys finish last never met Arkansas pro George Cochran. He's a true gentleman, a great ambassador for the sport, and he's a former champion right here on Kentucky Lake thanks to a good deed.
One of my funny stories is the FLW championship, Kentucky Bartley, that I won a few years back. The last day of competition, the top 5, the cameraman in the back of the boat, we were fishing in this Pirates Cove. Well, this lady on the bank saw that he had a camera and she wanted to get on TV, so she hollered and said, if you come over here and take my picture, I'll let you have one of my famous fried pies. And the cameraman said, boy, I'd like to have one. I said, all right. So I eased the boat over there, and right when we got to the lady where she was going to give him a fried pie, I flipped my jig right next to the bank where I haven't fished at all, wasn't even attempting to fish, and I caught a 5-pounder. And that helped me win that tournament. I hate to tell everybody that, but that fried pie is what helped me win that tournament.
Coming up next on FLW Outdoors, Larry Nixon sits down with second-place finisher Davey Height. Finds out how Height caught fish after fish after fish on Kentucky Lake.
Welcome back to FLW Outdoors, and I'm here with our second place finisher, Davey Height. Tremendous job, buddy.
Well, it was a fun week. Just didn't quite pull off the win, but second isn't so bad.
No, well, I don't know. I'm always disappointed when I don't win, but let me tell you, second is good. You did good. Let's look right here just a little bit at this footage of where you were fishing, and I want you to describe to me what you think these fish were doing.
Well, Larry, you know, I've come to Barkley Lake and Kentucky Lake and high water, and I flipped bushes for 2.5 days, and I just didn't have a real good practice going. The last day of practice, I went to Kentucky Lake and started fishing off the bank, and got on a little deal fishing back in these creeks where the water was just a little clear from the water coming out of those creeks, and fishing the old lake line, the edge, you know, these gravel bars and stuff in the creek, and fish were just stacked up. It's just unbelievable. I've never seen anything like this, for the water to be so good and the cover up in those bushes and trees, and these fish to be sitting outside. It's totally going against everything I've ever learned about bass fishing, these fish being outside, all this cover with the rising water. But, you know, I love to flip and pitch as much as anybody, but, you know, I think I'm halfway decent at it, and I'd spent like 2.5 days of my practice in those trees, and it just wasn't, I knew there were too many fish in this lake. They weren't all in there.
Outside that old lake line, there was no cover except maybe gravel or rocks, and the fish were right on that gravel.
And it makes a natural little, you know, a little contour change where you have this erosion in that old lake line. So it's like a hump at 8 feet all the way around the lake, and there was certain little places in these creeks that these fish were holding. And it was gravel. I had 2 spots that it was very outside bushes, the outermost bushes on the old lake line, and these fish were really holding up in it.
Basically, you caught everything Carolina rigging and on a jig.
Yeah, you know, I use a variety of baits to try to get a big bite, but most of the fish I weighed came on a rattleback jig. I caught a lot of fish on Carolina rig, and on the Carolina rig, this is a bacon rind, is one of the baits I used. I used a lizard, I used a ring fry, I used a lot of different baits, trying to find a bait that would catch me those quality fish, because, you know, on Saturday I landed 71 fish. My camera boat driver counted how many fish I landed. And,
amazing.
You know, and you just keep searching for a way to catch that bigger fish, and end up the jig, and I use a black blue and a chartreuse pumpkin. And the jig is the bait that I caught my bigger fish on. I caught more fish on the Carolina rig. You could catch them on a lot of different baits, but, you know, there's some big smallmouth. Hopefully I'll get a hold of one of those today. But your hook to land percentage and ratio on Carolina rig so much better than, say, a crankbait. They'd bite a crankbait. The bigger fish would bite a jig, and those kind of things. But, you know, these fish, they're stacked up in there and they're feeding, and you can just land them so much better on the Carolina rig than some other things.
And when we come back, we'll have more with Davey Height.
Well, it's just a little sweet spot in the creek channel here. It's a big old creek, a lot of fish coming here to spawn. And use this area, the river muddied up, and I think it pushed a lot of fish in these creeks. But instead of going in the trees, they stopped a little shy of them. And that's what had me fooled for quite a while, and a lot of other people in the tournament, because it just doesn't make sense for them to be where they're at. For 4 days, I was experimenting, trying to find a big fish bait, and I didn't find one quite as good as Steve did, a big fish bait, I guess. But I used a lot of different baits. This is one still tied on the rod from yesterday. You can see the paint wore off the head. You can tell it's rubbing on gravel.
Sanded it right off.
That's right. Is there any rule against gluing them together? Make a total of 15 inches? This is fun, but we're just not making any money.
Dave, you've been was Bass Angler of the Year last year, a past FLW championship winner, and this year has been a tough season for you too. I know it has for me also. We've been gone so much, and this tournament's got to be special for you.
It really is. You know, I've had a tough year after a phenomenal year last year, but that's fishing. It's a very humbling sport, and it's good for me to see Larry Nixon not winning every tournament and see that you're human, and I know I've proven this past year that I'm human.
Now, you was also going on a pretty good boat ride, I understand.
Yeah, it's about 80 miles each way, and Kentucky Lake can get really rough. You didn't need a lot of fishing time. Because they were so stacked up. You know, a lot of times you can't make those long runs because you just take yourself out of the tournament because you only got a couple hours to fish. But boy, when you got there, you didn't need very long to start catching fish.
That's something else. That's the kind of fishing holes we dream of.
You bet. It doesn't happen very often.
No. It's amazing the bass that Kentucky Lake produced this week. Probably 5 or 6 years ago, it was a pretty tough lake.
Yeah, I remember hearing tournaments, you know, 10, 11 pounds.
That's right.
Tournaments. Now, 10, 11 pounds won't win a tournament this day.
Well, I hope it's on our schedule again next year, and I want to congratulate you on a great tournament. And when we come back, we'll have more from FLW Outdoors.
Well, it's been a great week. We, you know, had conditions like I've never seen before. I've never seen the water come up this much in this length of time. Caught so many fish, my hands are absolutely raw. Probably caught about 70 today, the last day of the tournament. And you know, no matter what happens, I've had a good week, caught a lot of fish, had a lot of fun, and I'll make a decent paycheck, that's for sure. Anytime you can make the top 10, I'd like to win. We're going to see what's going to happen here in just a little bit.
Here's your Rubbermaid RCL Walleye League recap. South Dakota Division, Lake Francis Case. The winner, Reed Whidvey of Pierre, South Dakota, 12 pounds, 8 ounces.
And welcome back to FLW Outdoors, coming to you from beautiful Kentucky Lake. You know, Taylor, one of our finalists, Tom Mansour out of La Crosse, Wisconsin, dominates the BFL Great Lakes Division. He's a 3-time season champion there. He finished 3rd in the EverStart Northern Division. He's a force on any northern waterway, but this week he proved he can also do it on Kentucky Lake. And he figured him out here in a variety of ways. Let's look back at Tom Mansour's final round on Kentucky Lake.
Today I'm going to try and hit some spots I haven't fished yet that I pre-fished and see if I can find some bigger fish that haven't been hammered yet. But they could have been fished the first 2 days already and I don't know it. So we're going to find out today. We'll see if we get bit here in these first 3 spots. And if not, we're still going to have a great day because we're out here fishing. My daughters are all excited. The newspaper does a big front page story every day about how I'm doing. It's pretty exciting. I was worried for a minute there. Well, this was a game plan today. Find a place I hadn't fished, throw a crankbait when I find them. Oh yeah. Fat little one. Got to take care of your fish in these tournaments. FLW has a 99.9% live release on these fish. And they'll penalize you if you bring in a dead one, so we take great care to not hurt one of these fish. There's an old saying, you never leave fish to go to fish. There's keepers here. So you just gotta, when you're getting them every cast, you don't leave. Ooh, see? Nice one. Ah, now we're having fun. Dandy. Oofta. There's a dandy. You don't know how good it feels to have a game plan work. Because you do question yourself at every point of the adventure. And every tournament's an adventure. Oh, there's a bite. Oh, back to missing. No, he ran with it. $26. Now you know why I went to the new spots first, so that we'd get a limit for sure. These spots have all been fished now, most of them, and you might get bit and you might not. I knew if I went to the new spots, I might get bit good on one of them, and we did, thank God.
Mansour turned in 15 3/4 pounds at the weigh-in for a two-day final round of 29 pounds, 11 ounces. Good for a third-place finish, his highest ever.
You thought it was fun to watch Tom Mansour catch fish? Just wait till you see Steve Kennedy. He's up next with Larry Nixon.
That's 100 grand right there.
Welcome back to FLW Outdoors, and with me I've got a tremendous champion, believe me folks, Steve Kennedy. Man, you did a great job, and I want to know something. Have you seen this?
Yes, we saw it this morning at Waffle House.
Oh, that's the first I've seen it this morning, and I know you've got to be excited.
It was an incredible day. Last 2 days have been the best tournament days of my life, and they just happened to happen with the FLW Championship. So.
There's one thing I want you to know. This man fished out an aluminum boat last year and fished the FLW Tour. What size motor?
50 horse.
A 50 horse motor. So you don't have to have a big flashy boat to win, but it helps, don't it?
It does help. Some of the places you want to go, that 50 horse won't get you, but other places it will.
And then this year you got you a Ranger 350.
Right.
That's a fairly old model too.
Right. It's 15 years old. So.
And how big a motor?
150, and I can get around.
Now tell me about this little fishy spot that you found. It says here, Kennedy hits fishy spot. Evidently that spot was loaded.
Hey, it was. When we got in there, that first 2 hours maybe on the first tournament day, we caught fish just about every cast. And figured out, you could work out there 100 yards, 200 yards. We had no idea going into this tournament how many fish were out there. But
now, was the bottom real flat? I mean, was it a rough area that just had a big feeding flat there?
It wasn't perfectly flat. There was, it was 8 to 10 foot. There was some kind of slope to it, but it was gravel, hard bottom. You had to find that hard bottom in every pocket. Huh? We got to get more excited? Are we not hooping and hollering enough? Man. You want to see us streak naked down the length of the boat? It's actually a pattern we've done before. We call it a green water pattern. I'm probably telling too much here. Dad showed it to me many years ago, but anytime you get a flood event, when you get the fish can't really stay on the river channel coming up so fast, you get these tremendous schools of fish just start moving, don't really settle anywhere, just out in the middle of the pockets. And You got to be there at the right time of day too.
I understand that you caught a lot of fish on a Carolina rig, and there was 2 different baits that you threw mostly on the Carolina rig.
Right. I made the cut throwing the Zoom brush hog. The baby brush hog seemed to catch the smallmouth, and then you could put on a Zoom trick worm and catch largemouth.
Just a straight tail worm, right?
Yeah, the trick worm. But then my 3rd day partner pulled out a Cinco. There he is. Ooh, yeah. Big smallmouth. Yeah. You the man.
They liking them Cincos, ain't they?
Yeah.
They eat them up.
Cinco's rule.
Now, once you got your limit on soft plastics, and I mean, even though you did catch some of your big fish on that, you utilized another lure to catch some of your real big fish,
Right.
didn't you?
After that, I ended up going to the 3rd day I used this fat-free shad that I'd painted up, and then the last day I ended up catching some of my biggest fish on a Rapala DT10.
Custom painted.
Custom painted by Brian out of I think it's North Carolina, and then I'd hand painted that one before I came up here.
You know, it's amazing that a lot of times when you find a sweet spot like that, a moving bait, if you can get them to bite a moving bait, you'll catch the bigger fish.
Right. I love throwing a crankbait. But I was working it really hard, and almost burning it at times, and ripping it and stopping it, and it's a good little bait.
Could you feel bottom with it?
Yeah, you'd bump bottom every once in a while. If you touch something pretty hard, you'd stop it and just sit there and wait, and lots of times you'd hit it there.
When you started.
But yeah, you could hit it, or if you hit a grass patch, you know, you'd stop it or rip it through, and but the key was just that working it hard, just jerk. You pop it and stop it, and then when you load up again, lots of times he's there. Don't let it sit there too long. Don't let him get a good look at it, really, is the key. Just make him react to it.
Now, you do know I've got to ask you one question.
What's that?
You gonna go buy you a new boat, a bigger boat?
That's not gonna happen right off the bat, no. I may buy my wife a new truck or something, but...
That's nice, I like that.
After all the miles I've put on hers.
Steve, congratulations again, and I'm sure you're gonna put that money to good use.
Yeah, I think I'll go get me a few more crankbaits.
Probably a few like that one.
Yeah, yeah.
And when we come back, we'll have more from FLW Outdoors.
I don't know what to say.
The Kentucky Lake waters were up to near record highs as anglers fished parking lots, farms, and backyards. But our winter locked onto a pattern that got better as the week rolled along. Today on FLW Outdoors, Larry Nixon joins us to review the exciting 2-man race to the finish. We'll recap the exciting and surprising results from one of America's great waterways. Plus, the Angler of the Year race has tightened up with just one event to go. It all starts right now on FLW Outdoors. Everyone, and welcome to FLW Outdoors. I'm Carlton Wing with Larry Nixon and Taylor Carr. We're joining you from the shores of Kentucky Lake, the site of the 5th stop on the Walmart FLW Tour.
And it's a lake that's way up there as far as water level is concerned. Larry, you had a good finish here. How much was the water level a factor in what you did?
Well, it was a big factor. I really thought I was going to catch them a lot better than what I did, but my pattern gradually went away when that water came up 7 feet, and I really struggled the first day, and finally I picked up on something the second day and managed to finish 28th.
You stand 11th now in the FLW Championship standings. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm glad to be there. That's kind of a lock for the championship.
Let's take a look at the top 5 now. Dan Moorhead still has a lead, but that lead narrowed somewhat. David Dudley made up some ground. He's 26 points behind Dan Moorhead now. Then Clark Wendland is the only other angler with a realistic shot at Angler of the Year.
That's right. I think there's only 3 people that's got a shot at it, because that 4th place guy is 105 points back, and that's a lot of ground to make up in one tournament.
One tournament, Lake Wheeler, coming up. Now, obviously,
act and how to be this professional fisherman, and rather than just jump right into it, I wanted to learn a little bit about it, and that was the best way to go, and it's really worked out well for me.
Oh my God, yeah! Woo, that's a fish! God, that's the biggest fish I've caught in my life.
Well, I tell you what, I think you're going to have great success. I've been watching you over the last couple of years, and you seem to be doing really well. And I'm sure I'll see you in Richmond, and you know, you're going to have a good career ahead of you, especially with that worm.
Thank you.
Good luck out there.
Welcome back to FLW Outdoors. Now, next week on FLW Outdoors, we'll be bringing you the exciting results of the BFL All-American. And Taylor, last year, that was when Steve Kennedy finished third in the All-American. It proved to be a breakout for his career.
Well, it's a big check for these guys, $100,000. It's also great national exposure, plus the winner fishes the FLW Tour the final year. That is really big. Time now for our viewers to get involved, a segment we call Ask a Pro. And this question comes from Tina Miller of Sparta, Tennessee, and she asks, I need some tips on catching bass that are guarding fry in the late spring. I've had no luck catching these fish. Well, Tina, here's your answer, and it comes from Stanley Pro Scott Martin.
Great question, Tina. You know, I live down on Lake Okeechobee, and I'm fishing 6 months out of the year around the spawn, and there's fry usually all over the lake. One of the best ways that I've found to catch bass under fry is with a floating worm, usually rigged wacky style. I usually hook the finesse worm in its middle, in the egg sac in the middle, and I'll actually cast the worm to the ball of fry and actually let it sink down very slowly. That will usually produce the strike. If that doesn't work, try a jerk bait such as a Rapala and throw it in and work it very slow on the surface. That will usually produce your best fish.
Well, Taylor, the remaining schedule for the 2003 season is down to one in the regular season. Lake Wheeler in June, and that's going to be a final push for the anglers to try to make that top 48 for the season championship.
They're all pointing toward that road to Richmond, Carlson. And what the rest of the season is about now is the road to Richmond, September 10th through 13th on the James River. The winner will take home $500,000. There'll be a big outdoor show involved. For more information, go to richmondva.org or, of course, FLWOutdoors.com. I think the Richmond event's going to be huge for all these anglers. Also going on Kentucky Lake, a big event sponsored by Stratus, and it benefits a great cause. To tell you about it, Dan Moorhead and Craig Powers.
It's a chance for us to give back to the troops that are providing us with all the freedoms that we love to do. You know, and being out of Nashville and Fort Campbell, they're all family. Well, we know a lot of the people that are overseas.
How many of those guys over there you think would trade places with us? You know, we're making a living catching fish, and they're protecting this country so we can make a living doing this. And you know, you can't put a price tag on that. That's priceless.
The Stratus tribute to the troops was a big success. Almost $15,000 was raised to benefit Operation Eagle's Nest, providing support to soldiers and families assigned to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Bill Henson and Scott Lefevers of Nashville won the first prize of a Stratus 185 with an Evinrude motor.
And at each of our tournaments along the FLW Tour, I try to take some behind-the-scenes photos in our Fuji Find Pick segment. As we begin this week's edition, we focus on the big water of Kentucky Lake and the big money for our new champion. Kentucky Lake provided plenty of water for the FLW anglers. This is the parking lot, underwater, and that no parking sign wasn't really needed. The morning boat check took place on an island, and launching your boat from the parking lot instead of a ramp provided little angle for anglers like Lowry's pro, Jim Moyna. All the tournament attention was on Evinrude pro, Dan Moorhead. The Kentucky native finished 55th, but he still holds the Land O'Lakes Angler of the Year lead. But this tournament was a two-man race between Steve Kennedy and Davey Height. And in the end, it was Kennedy signing the autographs as tournament champion.
Carlton, beautiful pictures from Kentucky Lake. We now look forward to our final event of the regular season, Lake Wheeler, next month.
And don't forget, next week on FLW Outdoors, we'll be with you from Mobile, Alabama for the 2003 BFL All-American. Thanks for watching this week on FLW Outdoors. Alabama.